Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Brad from B&B Cosplay. Today, I'm going to be showing you how I made my transforming cassette Laserbeak for my Soundwave cosplay. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Soundwave was a Decepticon who was a boombox, and he had cassettes that would go inside of him, and they jump out and they transform into minicons. Well, one of the minicons was Laserbeak. He was a condor, so was Buzzsaw. They were both birds, basically, and they would transform into flying birds, and they would fly around. So basically what I wanted to do was make one of those guys. So when I actually started this build, I didn't plan on making a transforming cassette. So a couple challenges I had when I made this. One, I had to make it transform, which was not easy, but I did it. Two, it had to be the same thickness as what I built this originally on. Because like I said, when I built this, I didn't plan on making a transforming cassette. So I had to take that into consideration when I made this new one. It was challenging, but I was able to do it. And I'm going to show you how. So let's get into this. Alright, so the first thing I did was I cut my pattern out on some cardboard. This is the front side with the legs. And then this other one is the back side of the cassette with the wings. And they go just like this. And then the legs pop up like so. Alright, so we're going to move on to cutting these pieces out. We're just going to trace them out with my pen. And then once I do that, we'll go ahead and cut them out. Alright, so we got those cut out, and they fit just like that onto the middle piece. And again, these are the wings. They're going to come out like that. Let's cut out the centerpiece. Alright, now that that's cut out, this is how it's going to work. Alright, so what I'm doing here is putting some strips on the edges of the wings, and that's going to give it some depth while also concealing the transforming mechanisms on the inside of the cassette. Mark it with a pen, then paint it with large contact cement. When you're using this, you want to make sure it's not too thick and you're applying nice even strokes. And then you're just going to let that set up until it kind of has like a hazy look to it. And then you know it's ready to go. And then you can stick both pieces together like so. And you just want to make sure that you're holding it as even as possible, edge to edge, just to make sure that you're not putting it on crooked or anything like that. And then I actually left the little nubs on there, and you'll see that here in a second. And then I'll just cut them off with my blade. It's easier sometimes just leaving the nubs on it like this, just so you're not trying to measure things and cut it to the exact length that you need. It's just easier to cut the nubs off when you're done. And there we go. All those are done. Next we're going to need to do the same thing to the middle piece to get it to the same depth as my wings. Alright, so we're going to move on now to the transforming wing bracket. Just made that out of some piece of plastic. Cut out the basic shape that I needed, drilled a 1/2-inch hole in it so I can mount it to the foam with this 1/2-inch aluminum piping. And that just acts as if it's a hinge. I just cut out 1/2-inch length of that and then stuck it into the foam And it basically acts as a pivot point now. Okay, so I have both of those done. You can see the operation of the wing with the bracket that I made. And here is what the other side of the cassette will look like. Pretty easy operation. Okay, so next I took this 2mm foam with that adhesive back on it to fill these blank spaces in the wing cavity, so it basically prevents any kind of restriction from anything that I put on top of that. So it almost has like a groove, kind of like a little channel to operate in there. So when I put the front of the cassette on, it will not hinder the movement of the wings. So next we're going to go ahead and move on to putting the front of the cassette on. I have Laserbeak's beak cut out. And now we're going to put the front of the cassette on here. It's also going to hold down my brackets to keep them from popping off of there while operating the wings. The design here was actually quite simple. I just cut kind of like a hinge into the foam, made it just tight enough so it had enough tension on it and it didn't just want to flop around. You can see my hinge here, and then I just ran a screw down through it, and basically it just lets it do its thing. Now I have two legs, and we'll go ahead and put that on to the back of the cassette. Check out the operation here, make sure everything's still looking good. Yeah, it feels pretty good. I like it. I'm happy with it. Okay, so now I'm just using my hole saw to cut the holes back out of the piece of foam that I installed on the back side, or the front side, I guess you would call it. And I have a really great video on using my hole saws if you want to check that out. Next we're going to move on to Laserbeak's neck and head. This is another pretty simple design. I just cut my pieces out so that fit down into the channels. And then I glued the base of the neck with just basically a little piece of foam that I had recessed into the other foam. And then my hinge for the head was a skewer, and I just ran it through, and it all fits together great. The tension is nice, and it works great. So now we're moving on to some detail kind of work. I like to use my blade to cut basically grooves, little 45-degree angle cuts into the foam. And then I'll pop all those out of there, and that's going to give me little channels in there for that added detail. Just want to make sure you're being careful not to cut all the way through the project. That would not be a good day. Now that I have all of that done, move on to the next step of this, which is taking my file, and I just run a file on the inside of that just to define the base of the cuts, the grooves that I made. Just kind of squares it out a little bit and gives it a nice little cavity for your weathering paint to kind of go into and just make it look a little bit more realistic. All right, so that's done. Let's see how it works. Bring the wings out. And then his head. Nice. There we go. There's Laserbeak. So before I paint it, I'm going to heat seal this real quick. Just use my heat gun. I turn it on high. I hold it a couple inches away from the piece that I'm working on, and just make sure you're moving it around. You do not want to hold this on too long because you can expand and pop seams. You can burn the foam, and you can also melt hot glue if you've used hot glue at all. So just make sure you're always moving as you do this. You don't want to hold it in one spot too long. And then once this is all heat sealed, you can go ahead and paint them up. And this is what the finished product looks like. I just added that jetpack on as well. I didn't show that in the video. It's pretty simple to do though. And then here is Laserbeak back into cassette mode. And that is it. That is how I built Laserbeak. All right, well, that's how I did it. I didn't show you how I painted. I have other videos showing you how I paint. So if you want to check that out, please go check them out. If I can figure out how to work this YouTube thing, you might see a thing up here that you can click on and it'll take you to it. Otherwise, I'm sorry, I'm just not good enough with YouTube, and I'm still getting there. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. You can always catch my current projects on Instagram at BMBids or Facebook on BMB Cosplay. And also, I'm on TikTok now, so I better see you on there. I'm BMBids on there as well. Hey, until next time, I'll catch you later.